Hello everybody and welcome back to our Contemporary House series. We're going to jump right into working on some of the living space pieces today. And so we'll just go through our layers here and turn off our second floor and our roof. And then we can get a good view of the living space itself. Now I think on the blueprint, it's, I have to get underneath this one. Yeah, on the blueprint itself, it's pretty much just a little diamond shape with a picture of a couch on it. And they don't really establish any of the actual pieces that are going to end up going here. And I think something else we'll need to address is that on the plan, this was a sliding door, and we ended up just putting a regular door in. And I think the regular door is still fine. We can swap over to a sliding door later on if that's necessary. But I think the issue here is that both of these open out into the room. And realistically, if we look at putting a couch in here, we're not going to have a whole lot of space left over. So I think we're going to go through and swap these hinges around so that they can open inward. And I don't think that should create too much of a problem for either of these. This is more of a storage space, so that shouldn't be too big of a deal. And for this particular room, it'll basically just open up and kind of block the sink a little bit. It shouldn't be too big of a problem, and especially for a rendering. So it's not too big of a deal. We can go ahead and change those hinges around. And so first we'll just go here and say hi to both of these doors. So we'll just take both these pieces and do a -1 shift. And then we can drag these over to the other side of the door. Make sure that they clear the lip a little bit. And we'll do the same for the top hinge. There we go, that's that one done. So then we can go and do the same for these hinges over here and then unhide the doors. There, unhide last. And so now we can just take these doors, take both of them, and just do a -1 shift on these. And then we can slide these back in and find where they match up with the hinges. Right there. And this one got pulled a little too far, but that's fine. We can just bring it back to there. There we go. So that's that done, and I don't think that should create too much of a problem. If it does, we can go back and address it later, but for now we just kind of want to free up some of the space here for the couch. So we can get into making the couch now. So first, we'll drag out a rectangle. And there are sort of averages for couch sizes and things like that. And I've looked at some of the normal dimensions or standard dimensions for a couch, and I think primarily it's just all too big for this particular space. So we'll make a custom one. So we'll drag this length dimension down to 6'9". Try that out. We'll now pull it up 3'1", and just see what the depth here is. We'll make this 3'4", make this a little bit longer. I think that seems like a reasonable size. Now we're just kind of gotta shape it down into what we want. And for this primarily we're gonna go after a simpler look. We don't want it to be too complicated, kind of keep it modern like the rest of the house. And so we'll just drag in some guides here and see what we have. These are all 7 inches. It's around 7 inches, and we'll have it be probably 2 inches off the floor, maybe 1.5 inches. Bring this down to 0.5. We want this to be a little bit taller than the rest of that, so that make this 9 inches on the bottom, or maybe 10. And we'll drag out our rectangle here and push this back to this guide. And so clearly this is too tall, so we'll just push this down. We kind of want it to be a little bit more than double the height of the base here, so we're going to put in probably a cushion about the width of the sides. So we'll say 7 inches for now. We might end up making that a little bit thicker. And then about this again, we'll say 8 inches on top. So we can push this down to there. And so that will be the cushion. And that's a little bit too low, I think. Another 2 inches high. And we're starting to deal with a lot of guides here. That's kind of making it a bit difficult to see. So we're going to take the bottom layer of the couch, so we'll just double click that, and then we can move it up. We'll use the move tool here and bring that up on the blue axis, 1.5. Alright, and it does seem a little bit bigger than we want at the moment, especially sort of width, but we are going to be adding cushions, so that'll probably bring that depth down a little bit, but we may make it a little bit shorter, so we'll say 4 inches. Just drag a line down through there and cut that. Bring this down 4 inches. And now we want to see what we can end up with if we were to drag out 3 cushions. So just take our 4 guides here and scale them to the other side. and see what sort of dimensions we have for our cushion. And so that, as it stands, is 1'9". And so if we were to draw in a cushion, we'll just see sort of what the dimensions would look like. And maybe a bit too rectangular, so maybe we'll just do 2 cushions. It might be a bit, might look a bit better. I think it's somewhere in the middle ground where it's almost too long to be a love seat, but it's also a bit too short to be a sort of a comfortable couch. So maybe we'll drag the length down even further. Say another 4 inches. Delete our guides, push this in 4 inches. Draw some lines down here as well. And it definitely seems a bit too deep, especially for the space that we have. So we'll pull this in a couple of inches. Bring that back out the same distance. So we'll copy this cushion here and delete that. We can paste it down here and group it. Now we'll say couch cushion. So we'll take this top one and we'll paste it here. So we can group this one now. We'll say couch cushion base. And of course this will be the base pillow. We're going to sort of do a 1 cushion base rather than splitting it up into 2. So bring that up to 7 inches. And then we can erase this one, so we'll just push that down to there. And so the couch that we're going for is much more of a fabric look, more than anything else. And so the way that we can make that look more realistic is to actually break the model down into those components and then detail them separately. And so the way we can do that, so we'll have the arms attached to the back, so we'll separate these. We can actually probably go in and hide the first floor layer. And then this will give us a chance to go through and make sure that all of the pieces that should be on the first layer are. There we go. And so now we can get back to our couch and start pushing these lines down. And so we'll just copy and move this piece over to here. And so that's 7 inches thick. So we'll say 7. And that'll be that arm. And we can effectively just take this piece and mirror it to the other side. So we don't need to do 2 of those. So we can erase this now. And the base will attach to the back. So we can go in and fill this back in. So we'll copy this back piece, move this over here. This is 7 inches thick as well. So now we can erase the back. And we can erase this other arm as well because we don't need this. And so now we can just fill in the base like that. And then we can just start labeling the pieces. So we'll go in group. We'll say couch back. Group this one, couch base. Couch arm. And so now we can sort of push all these back together. We'll duplicate this one over here and mirror it, -1, and pull that into there. And then we can pull this base piece into there. And we can leave the cushions out of the way for now. We're just going to deal with this arrangement of pieces. And so first thing we want to do is sort of round out the arm a little bit and make it look a bit more realistic. So we'll triple click this. We'll go to our Round Corners tool, and you can find this on the extension warehouse if you don't have it. And we'll select this yellow-orange one here, and this will sort of round out our corners. And what we can do here is if we select the offset, we can go in and we'll say 1/2 inch, so 0.5. And you can see that essentially this is the green line will sort of represent the area that's going to be rounded. If we just preview it, we can see that essentially this is what it's going to look like once it rounds the corners. So we'll undo that, except we don't want it to round the bottom as well. So we can just click this and that will sort of exempt the bottom from being rounded. So now we'll hit OK. And then we can go in with the Round Corners tool again. And if we just select the bottom here, we can go in, we'll say probably 1/8 inch, like that. We'll round that now. And so it's a pretty useful tool as it kind of allows you to combine multiple intensities of rounded corners together. And especially if you were to just use the Follow Me tool, offsetting a rounded corner sort of around an angle isn't really going to work as well if you need to have it go in the other direction at some point. So the Round Corners tool is definitely something you'll want to look at. And so now we'll kind of want to add a little bit of a sort of domed out convex look to the top and side here, not too far. But if we select it now, you can see that it selects everything because it's rounded. So we'll just go in and say Hidden Geometry, and this will allow us to select individual faces, all of the little sort of the flat pieces within the rounded corners that we just made. And so we'll take the top piece here and we'll double click it. We'll cut it and paste it out of here. We'll draw a line around it so that we can sort of make it its own face again. And we'll go up to the Soap Skin tool now. And this is a separate tool. You can find this on the extension warehouse as well under Soap Skin and Bubble Tool. And we'll just press this first one here, Generate Soap Skin. And it'll divide it up into a grid for us here. And we can select how many divisions we want. We'll say 20. And we'll just let that go through and do its thing. And so the good thing about Soap Skin is that it generates the soap skin sort of on a different face that mirrors the face you originally had. So you don't need to worry too much about manipulating the original face if whatever you're making turns out to not be what you wanted. And we'll just erase this face here. And so the magic of Soap Skin really comes through with the bubble tool. So we'll select our face here. And we'll go up to where it says Bub. Select that. And now we have a little pressure gauge down here. And we'll actually go in and enter, not 100, let's say 200, just so you guys can see what it does. And it actually will inflate the model a little bit based on sort of the geometry that we've outlined with the divisions earlier. And you can undo that. We'll say 1,000 just to go overkill with it. And you can sort of start to see the potential that this has. Of course, if you want it to go the other way, you could say minus, and it will sort of do a concave shape and pull it inward. And we'll just do 200 and see what that looks like. This might be good for what we need. So now we can take this shape and pull it up. We'll try and line it up with this. And I think some of these faces were attached to the original rectangle we pulled out of here, so we can just go ahead and draw these back in. So now we're going to move on to an entirely different tool set, and that's of course the Artisan Toolset. Just to sort of round out the top of this arm to make it look a little less rigid. And so a way you can do that is if we just take our model here, we'll go into this, and you can select the Subdivide tool, and that will basically break up your model into twice as many polygons, twice as many triangles, so that you can go through with the sort of the sculpt brush here. And if we just cycle through tab, we can cycle the different modes that we're using, pinching, sort of bringing the pixels or the polygons together. You can inflate things if you want to go through and essentially change how all of this looks, which is great for terrain if you're trying to model a garden or sort of a lawn or something to go along with your house. There's also flattening and sculpting that you can go through. You can essentially raise and lower. If you change the arrows here, you can essentially change the intensity of which you're manipulating those triangles. And of course, the more triangles you have, the more refined you can make it look. And then of course, if you want to do the inverse and reduce the number of triangles you have, you can go through as well with the reduction tool here. And essentially it'll prompt you with how many polygons you want to remove. But for our purposes, we're actually going to select all of the arm and the top piece here. Maybe we'll actually explode this top piece so we can blend it in. So we'll select everything, and now we'll go up to Subdivide and Smooth. And this will sort of prompt us with a different style of box, which will allow us to subdivide the base of the arm as well as the top piece that we've introduced. And of course, now we haven't added a front or anything to this, but this will essentially just be for previewing purposes. So if we go ahead and hit enter on this, SketchUp will do its best at trying to combine all of those faces. And now we can go in and smooth that out as well with the smooth selection tool. So we can just click this and it'll essentially reduce some of the polygons and try and drag them closer together. We can just keep doing this until we're either happy with it or decide that it's not going to work. And I think in this case, it really just seems to be wrinkling the edges. So I don't think this is going to work. And we'll cycle through until it says smooth. And we could go through and just do this essentially to try and see if we can recover any of this. But I don't think that's going to work. And I think probably the best way we can go about this is excluding the top piece altogether and just subdividing the bottom here. So we'll undo all of those changes that we made. And unfortunately, I guess we'll have to get rid of the top piece as well because it doesn't seem to be working. So now we'll just go through and say smooth on this as well. And we'll hit this a couple of times to introduce a few more polygons here. And so now we can take our smooth tool and we'll just reduce what it's going to affect. And just go through and sort of play with how a lot of this stuff looks. So sort of one of the key things about a lot of furniture is that they're not symmetrical and they don't really follow any sort of uniform shape. You can sort of base them off one, but when you're getting into the details of it, they're really not all the same. So I should take this now and add a few more triangles to it so we can subdivide here. And that'll add twice as many triangles for us to play with. So we can get back into smoothing it. Essentially just trying to make it look a bit more organic, a bit more realistic. And SketchUp doesn't particularly do organic well. It usually prefers square shapes or boxes. And if you're finding that you spend a lot of time making, I don't know, bed sheets or curtains or that sort of thing, there are definitely other programs that do that sort of thing better than SketchUp. 3D Studio Max, Blender, Maya, those sorts of things. And then once you make them in those programs, you can then import them into SketchUp and save yourself the hassle of sort of playing around with all these little polygons. But I think for now this will work. And we'll just go ahead and turn off hidden geometry and sort of see what that looks like. And essentially the whole idea here is to just make it not look uniform and sort of hide any of the little inconsistencies that SketchUp generally likes to throw at you. Particularly when there's too many sort of triangles next to each other. You tend to get those. But once we throw some textures on here and manipulate the mapping and that sort of thing, a lot of that will go away anyway. So you don't need to spend too much time fidgeting. And we'll just do a little bit more smoothing right where this essentially connects to the base here. And now, of course, the other sofa arm has been mirrored this whole time. And so now we'll just take the base of the couch and we'll make sure that it's touching both sides here. It seems to be a little bit shorter than it needs to be. We'll pull it to there. And so we'll want to round this as well. We don't necessarily want to round the front because that's sort of going to end up being flush with the rest of this. And in fact, we can probably just go in and pull this through here because this is going to end up going a bit more into the couch than sticking out of the front. So we can pull this over and then push the front in to about there and then bring the base up. Not too much because the subdividing will definitely bring that up a bit higher. So we can go into this, we'll triple click everything, go into our round corner tool again and bring this up to probably 1/4 of an inch, 0.25. And we'll let it do everything. Just hit enter there. There we go. So now we can go into this and we'll say subdivide. Say subdivide again. And so now that we have that done, we can go in and say smooth selection, and that'll sort of bring all those triangles in and make it a little bit more organic. And then we can go in ourselves and we'll actually bring the front out a little bit and give this a little bit of a bow. So we'll just tab over to inflate and we can change the pressure and the size. And we'll just bring the front out a little bit. We don't want it to be too far. Then we can tab back to smooth and just bring it back in a little bit. And actually, I think we'll smooth this again. So we'll go up to smooth. And that'll sort of pull it in automatically. And then we can just manipulate this sort of box shape here. Can pull that over to there. And we'll just sort of center it. Pull the bottom up a little bit, not too far beyond the base, but we definitely don't want it sticking through. There we go. So I think that will do it for the base of the sofa. And we'll just turn off hidden geometry and see what that all looks like. Yeah, I think that's fine. And so what we can do here is we'll just hit subdivide on this. And we'll only need to do one. Then we can go through and hit smooth a couple of times. And this will pull all of those triangles out. And this will allow us to get a bit more of that domed look that we want. We can go through with our smoothing now. And we'll just pull this down. We don't want it to be too big of a radius. And then we can just go through and play with these edges. And we don't necessarily need to do too much on the seams where it's going to match up on the front. But I will play around with these corners on the top edge here. And I'll turn off hidden geometry here just so I can see essentially what you would normally see without those lines on. We'll do sculpt and we'll bring the line down negative now so that we'll push it in. And we'll just do a couple of these. Turn this back on. We go through and smooth. And we'll just bring this up positive again. I'll just sort of smooth that wrinkle out. But of course leave a little evidence that it was there. And now what we can do is go through and sort of pull this flush with the sides here. We don't want it to be sort of intersecting, but we definitely want it to meet up with the edges. Set down to probably about there. I think that's good. And probably pull it in a tiny bit. And so that'll do it for the bulk of the couch. Now what we need to do is actually the cushion. and then the cushions that go on the back. So we'll just do this one here first, the base of the seat. And I guess we can maybe put that in place, or maybe, well, I guess we'll round it first before we do that. So we'll go in here, and we'll want this to be a little bit more rounded than the arms. So maybe we'll do a 0.75 inch round on this. Hit enter there, go into view geometry, then we'll subdivide it, and then hit smooth a couple of times and pull those triangles in. And we'll need to rescale this one for sure. But we definitely want to give it a bit more of a bow on the edges here, and especially on the top as well. So we'll go through with our inflate, and we'll make this sizable. I'll make this piece kind of big, and just bring this up a bit, make it a bit more, you know, kind of like one of those comfy couch cushions. It's got a lot of sort of a bow to the top of it. We can triple click all of this, and we'll just hit smooth on it. We can tab over to our actual smooth tool, and then just start bringing some of this down again. And we'll just see what this looks like without hidden geometry. Now we'll just go through and sort of round out some of these edges. Try to make it look a bit more cushiony. I think that's pretty close, so we'll just pop this in place. We might need to rescale it now as well. The smoothing process does sort of bring the size down a little bit, but that's not too big of a deal. Bring it back over to there. We'll slide this sort of back into place. And it's okay to have some of the sort of the edges sort of clipping through. It just makes it look like it's pressing up against the edge of the arm more, rather than having the edges visible all the way through the back. And so there's sort of two ways we can go about doing the cushions for the back. We could kind of sort of emulate these cushions that we already have, or we can make them look a bit more like pillows. And so we'll experiment with both, I suppose. So we can take this and just duplicate it for now. And we'll hit make unique on this so this one doesn't manipulate it. We can double click this, and we'll go up to our Soap Skin tool, and we'll hit this. We'll say 20 subdivisions, and hit enter on it, let it fill those in. So now we'll select what it generated and hit the bubble tool. And so I guess we'll leave it on that, be 500. And then we can take this, and we'll say -1 on it, and then line up those seams. And there you sort of have kind of a basic pillow shape. We can bring this up to here. And we'll just see sort of what it would look like if we were to use this one. And that's essentially it. We could go through, we'll group this, we'll just say couch pillow 1, in case we decide to do a different idea. We can go into this, and we'll explode both of these so that it sort of combines the faces. And now we can say, we'll say smooth, and that'll pull in some of those edges for us. And it hasn't really worked that well. And so I think what's happening here is there's actually a face on the inside. So we'll undo that. And then we'll undo the explosion as well. And just make sure that we get rid of the interior face here. So that's just these two halves. We can pull these together again. Now we can hit explode again. Now we can hit smooth. There we go. And I think that definitely looks a bit more along the lines of what we're after. We'll go in with our smooth tool again and start pulling down the top of the pillow. And I think for this, actually, we'll go to our sculpt tool and pull it in a little bit, and just sort of bring a bit of the roundness off of the front here. And now I think what we'll do is we'll just bring this up so that we can kind of sort out the back of this. We'll sort of want to flatten the back off a little bit, just so it can kind of rest up against the back of the couch. And we'll tab over to smoothing again, and we'll make sure that our line is out and not in. It really causes a lot of the lines to start freaking out for whatever reason. So make sure that it's pointing outward from the face, and you shouldn't have any problems. So now we'll triple click everything again, and we'll say subdivide and smooth. Hit enter on it. There we go. And it'll sort of create a bit more of a fabric-y, more refined, smooth look. And we'll get rid of all of the faces as well. So now we'll just go in and show hidden geometry again. And so we'll just go through and smooth this. And we don't want it to look too smooth because, of course, there are definitely lines of tension on different pillows, sort of close to where the edges are on where it's sort of sewn together. And we'll try and replicate some of that here. And we can do that by going to our sculpt tool. And we'll scale this down so that it's a negative. And then we'll scale this lot radius down a little bit. And just start sort of pinching some of this stuff in. And so that's sort of effectively what we want. Bring some of these lines in a little bit further from the edges. And now we'll just take our smooth tool again. Make sure that's pointing out. I'm going to just go through all of this here and try to make it look as pillow-like as possible. There's really no right or wrong way of going about this. Fabric kind of looks like fabric, and replicating it can be difficult, so it may take a couple attempts here, but I think this is looking fairly good. Alright, and so now I think that will do it for the couch cushion. And so what we'll do there is just bring this down until it sort of meets the fabric of the base, and we can rotate this just a little bit, try and get this to fit in as much as possible. So we'll just drag this back to about here, have it intersect a little bit, not too much, and make sure that it's over on this edge. I think we'll actually take the width and drag it across there. Then we can just duplicate it. We'll drag this over to here. Try and keep it on the green axis. And what we'll do in this case is actually rotate it 180 degrees like that. So now we have the reverse side of the cushion facing out. And I think actually what we'll do is do a -1 shift on it as well to make it look as different as possible. And now we can just rotate it and bring it up a little bit from the base. I think actually we'll bring this one down because it is kind of rotated maybe a bit too much. Get down 1/2 inch. You do the same on this one. And then just make sure that these aren't inside of each other. There you go. And then scale them down along this axis to get them to fit like that. And we'll just turn on our shadows here. We can get rid of this one because I think we have our couch cushion sort of figured out. We can go in and turn on profiles and see what we got here. And so we'll turn our shadows and profiles back off again just to sort of increase the performance a little bit. And I think for the feet on this, we'll just do these on the arm. So then we can go in and we'll just make these maybe 5 by 5 squares. We'll drag these up a couple of inches, say 3 inches. And we'll bring these down 1.5 inches. And we'll group them. We'll say couch foot, just so it doesn't get combined with the geometry of the leg here. And we'll just drag this back here. Just kind of center it up. Doesn't need to be in any particular location, I don't think. And I guess we'll drag the ones on the front out to meet up, sort of to match the ones on the back, like that. There we go. And I think that means it's done. So we'll go ahead and group this. We'll just say couch. And we can turn on everything, say first floor. And we'll turn on our profile so we can get a better idea of where this is. And just sort of center this up a little bit. So now we can move on to doing the coffee table. And so we'll just have a look at what's available on the warehouse. And I think we'll probably actually go with something like this. Fairly simple. Just sort of a metal frame. We can do maybe some sort of chrome or rustic metal look with this. So we will download this model. And we'll stick this right here. And the texturing on it isn't actually that bad either, but we're still going to go into this and just reset sort of everything back to 0. And we can explode this. I don't see any reason why this shouldn't be connected. And we'll just take our top surface here and pull this down. That's 1 inch. So we'll bring it up about there so that it's 1/8. And then we can give ourselves 1/8 inch gap. We'll drag this in 1/4. And this will sort of just be a visual representation where the split is between the wooden countertop and sort of the metal frame. And we'll just turn off profiles again, increase the performance a little bit. And then we'll make the top probably 1.5 inches tall. So we can drag this up to there. Make it a little bit thicker. And how thick is the frame? Let's get rid of that guide. It's maybe 1 inch. I'll probably reduce this down to maybe 0.75. Just see what that looks like. Or maybe we'll keep it 1 inch. I think we'll keep it 1 inch. So now we can sort of drag this back down here, try and center it with the couch. And of course the easy way we can do that is we'll just go and turn on parallel projection and then do the overhead camera. And then we can drag this down and we'll actually probably shorten this a little bit. And we'll probably shorten it to about here-ish. We'll do that just so it lines up a bit better with the sort of the sittable area of the couch and frees up a bit of space going around it. So we can turn on perspective again. And we'll drag these in. That's about 7 inches. We'll say 8 inches. 8 along the bottom there. And then this one. So I'll shorten that up a couple inches. And we'll just go in and check the insides of these. And these are sort of textured in here as well. So we'll get rid of that. And check the inside of the table. That's detextured, so that's fine. So we'll leave that and delete our guides. I can hide that tab. I'll just sort of check and see this sort of this space that we have here. It's about 1.5 feet almost. And then of course the gap that we have here, just over 2 feet. And I guess that will work. We're not really going to be able to do a TV stand as such, but we might be able to get away with sort of shimmying some of this stuff back a bit further and just sort of condense the space that we have here along the back to try and free up as much space as we can along the front here. Maybe do a little sort of accessory cabinet and then mount the TV on the wall. But we'll look into doing that next time for sure. But that will go ahead and wrap things up for this part. And I think our couch came out pretty good, or our love seat. And it will look even better once we get some textures on there and then start playing around with shaders and different sort of lighting models and that sort of thing. But again, thank you everybody for watching. That will do it for this part. I'll see you guys next time.